All right, thank you everyone for joining. Okay, so welcome to the AZ 104 class, and this is where it's going to start from. So for me, or for this particular course, the plan is to, do more of labs. However, we are going to be explaining some of the theoretical aspects for our own understanding also. Now, we'll be using the portal for most of the labs in there. However, some of them, we are still going to be leveraging on um, the Azure Cloud Shell, where we run our PowerShell and our CLI script. So let's start with the first module, which is identity, administer identity. Under this particular module, we are going to be looking at different learning objectives. We talked about the fact that for us to be able to manage the Azure environment, we need to understand the identity object, and also we need to understand, you know, um, resources. Now, we've been able to at least have a small understanding of this, but this particular course will enlighten us more. So the learning objective there, we are going to be looking at Microsoft Entra ID. We're also going to look at how to configure users and group accounts. Then we'll wrap it up with the Lab O1, which is manage Microsoft Entra ID identities. I don't know if I have sent you guys the lab page. That that is this page that contains all the labs. We'll be looking at it because in this class we are not going to wait till the last day, like we did for the fundamental to proceed with the labs. Would have those lab embedded within our classes, so it's kind of going to be different because this one, at the end of the day, you guys going to be divided into groups and would have like a real life project, where you guys do something. Yeah, that's the link. Thank you. Okay, so let's continue. Like I said, we've got learning objectives, understand Microsoft Enter ID, configure users account, and we'll wrap it up with learn. So the pace we are going to be going is going to be different. I'm not going to stop at every PowerPoint slide because we only got, I think, initially this should be like 4 weeks. However, that's not possible technically, So I'm looking at, let's say, 6 weeks, to complete everything within um AZ104, so that we can proceed with the next course. Yep. So let's go ahead and talk about Microsoft Entra ID. So understanding Microsoft Entra ID, what are some of the things we are going to be looking at? We are going to look at the Microsoft Entra ID itself, what definition suits that particular, technology. We are going to look at some of the concepts. We are going to compare our Entra ID with our domain services, on-premises domain services. What are some of the differences? What are, similarities? Then we are going to compare, or let's say we are going to look at the licensing, the pricing plans when it comes to Microsoft Entra ID. Now, one of the reasons is if you want to leverage on some of the technologies, there are different plans. Even when there is a free plan for all, let's say you want to test something, you have that particular Azure environment, but what you're really doing, you are not leveraging on all those services, all those technologies offered. You might decide to stay with the free tier, but once you start leveraging on some of those services, some of those things that makes life easy, then you might need to change from the free tier to a premium plan. So how do you change? What licenses are required? And that's what we'll be looking at there. The last one would be how do we implement self-service password reset? We all know that most of the time we can forget our password, do we want to always raise a case or a ticket to the cloud engineering team to reset our password? Why this might be cool on our own part because we are the one raising the ticket. Just imagine you work for a company whose employees are like 5,000, and we've got like a cloud engineering team of maybe of 10 people, and everyone is raising ticket. Let's say out of the 5,000, 20%, have forgotten their password. That's like 1,000, and they always password reset ticket. That's going to be, there are lots of things the team should be doing, which should be far from just resetting password. That's nothing. There are other projects they want to embark on. There are other ticket that they should be paying attention to, and not just resetting password. So Azure gives you that liberty to set up or to implement what we call the self-service password reset, where users are able to reset their password on their own without having to raise an ticket. So we look at that also. So, like I've said, let's look at Microsoft Enter ID. What's Microsoft Enter ID? We all know that when you leverage the cloud, what you're doing is you want to be able to access resources over the internet. However, for you to be able to access those resources, you need identity objects. And when we talk about this identity object, you need maybe your user account that represents you, within the Azure environment. You need maybe an SP, which we call service principal, or which we call applications within the Azure environment to make that call. We can have that application, maybe use that application to access the portal instead of using our own user account. There are other identity objects also, which at some point we'll start talking about them, like the managed identity and the like. So, but don't bother yourself about that. Other identity object that we have, groups, like I said, application groups, user accounts. So all those are being referred to as identity object. Now we start looking at these, and this is comparing with what we have on the on-premises environment. But when we talk about identity, when we talk about all these identity objects, what are some of the objects, or what are the objects that we use in authenticating to our environment? That's what we are looking at. So those identities that we use in authenticating. And when we talk about authenticating, when we say login, I want to log into this thing. So the term here is authenticating, which we've explained. We've also compared authentication to authorization. I'm so sure you guys knows that. Now, this is what you can see. This is our on-premises environment. How do we log in to those services? And this is Azure. As we know, we've got the Microsoft Enter ID exists in the cloud, and every cloud services that we want to log into, we need those identities to be able to access those services. Now we've got users and groups, we've got authorization and authentication. And what are some of the protocols? And those are what we're going to be looking at. Now, what are the protocols that we use in accessing, in authenticating? What are protocols that works for us when it comes to authentication, or to authorization also? In on on-premises environment, for people that have been maybe close to tech before, you will have heard of Kerberos, for authentication and the likes. Here in Azure, it's different. We use OAuth, for authentication. We use OpenID, for authorization and the like. So yeah, this is what you're going to be looking at. This is what you're going to be hearing. So Enter ID is just where you manage or yeah, or let's say yes, Microsoft Entra ID is where you manage your identity object, which are used for authentication and authorization. Now you can see here all these listed here are, configure access to application, including single sign-on. It's just telling you for us to be able to access services, we need identity object, to be able to do this. You can actually, within the Enter ID is where we manage our user accounts and groups also. And one of the reasons why we have group, let's say you join an organization and you are actually within the fin or financial department, and within that department everyone needs access to a particular resource, maybe cost management resource and the likes, and we need to now assign a role to them. Now we've got like 20 of them. Do you want us to start assigning those roles one after the other? We'll rather create them, you know, we'll create a group for them, add everyone to that group, and assign that role to the group. That's one of the reasons why we want to have a group, but there are lots or different reasons, why we want to leverage on groups. So providing identity management solution, including federation, implement security features like multi-factor authentication, condition access. We talked about all these features. So where do we manage all these security features like 2FA, which is, or we can refer to it as MFA, also multi-factor authentication, conditional access that we talked about in the class. Where do we manage everything? We manage it within the Microsoft Entra ID environment. Now, these are some of the concepts that you need to understand. And with this now, you'll be able to talk more about Microsoft Entra ID. I've been talking about identity object, identity, and the likes. And this just explain identity as an object that can be authenticated. I told you that for you to be able to log in. Now, when we talk about authentication, we are just looking at accessing, logging in. Okay, say, oh, I want to log into this web application. I want to log into this Office 365, portal. Now, or rather, just say I want to authenticate, but you understand that it's me trying to log in, to access that particular service. Now, we need an identity. Your user account is your own identity. Maybe you've created a managed identity, you've created an SP, like an application that is used for authentication purposes. All those things can actually be used for authentication. Now, an identity, like I said, regardless of which one you want to use, is an object that can be, used for authentication purposes that can be authenticated. Now, moving away from that, we have account, which is also an identity, but an identity that has data, associated with it. Your user account is your own identity. You've got first name, last name, you've got some other data associated with you. So in that case, we'll not say, oh, it's just an identity. We'll say it's an identity account, or so yeah, it's an account. An account is an identity that has got data associated with it. Then we have Microsoft Entra ID account. Now you start hearing these ones, and I might not refer to it as Microsoft Entra ID account. Most of the time, I might refer to it as cloud only account. I might refer to it as work or school account. But when we talk about the Microsoft Entra ID account, those are identities that are created through Microsoft Entra ID or Microsoft or any other Microsoft cloud service. Let's say when we go to the portal now, and let me just show you. I'm just going to quickly show you. Let's say you have a domain, that you've purchased from GoDaddy, and you have this email address that you've created, or babafemi at identity.com. Let's say I've purchased identity.com. So I'm just going to move this one. All these accounts that you can see here are actually identities created within the within the Azure environment or Microsoft Entra ID environment, and that's why they are members. If I invite anyone, it's going to be showing as guests. So we'll still get there to talk more about this. Now, when you create like a user or your email address in GoDaddy, and I created something like babafemi at identity.com, I invited that particular identity to Azure. That identity is not going to be referred to as a Microsoft Entra ID account or a work account or a school account, because it wasn't created within the Microsoft Entra ID or any other Microsoft Cloud Service environment. Is an account that was invited to Microsoft Entra ID, to my Azure environment. But the ones you've created within your Microsoft Entra ID environment or any other Microsoft account like Power Apps, like Dynamics and the likes, those ones are the ones we refer to as Microsoft Entra ID account or even Office 365 environment. Now, with this what that gives you, it's a member account within your environment, and we refer to that as work or school account, like I've said. So anytime you see or hear about work or school account, we are still talking about the Microsoft Entra ID account. Now, there is something confusing when it comes to tenant and directory. Now, the next concept, like I said, is tenant, but I'm going to explain this in a different way so that you guys understand. Now, let's say Gmail or Google or let's say I have a company called IT360NG, and IT360NG wants to start leveraging on Azure. Now they need to create like their own Azure account. When they create this account, there's something that will be for them. They are going to get like a tenant. So a tenant is a representation of an organization within the cloud environment. So when we say tenant, we are just talking about an organization, in the cloud. So I will say, oh, Microsoft tenant. We're talking about the Microsoft organization in the cloud space. So that's why you can see a tenant is created when your organization signs on for any Microsoft cloud service. Now, this tenant have got their own directory of users. They've got their own directory of applications where they've deployed their applications, where they deploy their or created their users, their applications, their groups and the like. So the tenant and the directory are often, I would say, they are like the same thing, because you can use them interchangeably. So would say an organization in the cloud is referred to as tenant, or let's say specifically within the Azure cloud. And within that particular place, we've got like a directory of users, directory of groups and services, application and the likes. Now, the last one, which is is it? Okay, I think it's the last one, is the Azure subscription. Now, we've explained these when we were talking about, we gave the scenario of you renting an apartment, you buying in some of your gadgets and the likes, which we refer to as resources within that space. Now, before you can actually get anything within your house, you need at least, let's say, you need some cash. Let's say you have like an ATM card, which you always used in purchasing everything you want within that particular space. Now, that's the same thing that we have within this environment. So you need a subscription to be able to deploy resources. Without a subscription, you will not be able to deploy any resource, within your environment. And so you can see those resources are used to pay for your cloud services. But the way it works, would say it is pay as you go. You are not going to be charged, but you need somewhere where those resources needs to be deployed with. So you need a subscription. Where we talked about the hierarchy, we're talking about management group, then subscription, then resource group, then resources, then without a subscription, there is no way. Even when you can have management groups created, but you cannot have any resource deployed directly within your management group. You still need a subscription to be able to deploy, a resource. So, and that's where the Azure subscription comes into these concepts. This one, I'm just going to quickly, tell you that this is just comparing what we have when it comes to the Microsoft Entra ID and the Azure and the Active Directory Domain Services. Active Directory Domain Services, for people that are not or don't have any tech experience, is the identity solution that we use for our on-premises environment, and this is used for authorization and authentication of our identities on-premises environment. Now we are now comparing this to the cloud-based domain services, or to the cloud-based Entra ID. We know that the way this works, we have a server that is your client's system, or your system is connected to that, and that's why when you go to the office they say, oh, pick that cable, connect, so that you can see the server, you can connect to the server, you can authenticate, you can do some things and the likes. Or if you guys are leveraging on Wi-Fi or something, but you still need that connection to that server to be able to authenticate. But now the Enter ID is in the cloud, you can authenticate from anywhere in the world. Their protocols are different, and that's why. So you can see that when they started comparing, they said for this one, which is the Enter ID, now this is queried over HTTP and HTTPS, because connection is happening online. It's not the same where we have a server managing that particular authentication. So basically, if you just understand that particular, another thing I would like to tell you from everything that we have here is the fact that when you leverage on Microsoft Entra ID, you can actually federate this. And when we say we federate this, you want to connect it with other identity services, maybe third-party services, for users to be able to authenticate. And that's why when you try to log into or authenticate to some of these applications, you have the options of sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook, sign in with Gmail, sign in with apple.com and the like. This shows you that we can have other identity management or other third-party services integrated with our Microsoft ID or Microsoft Entra ID environment to allow users to use their preferred identity solution. It doesn't have to be ours. We can actually because of the federation and the like, even so we also have what we call the flash structure when it comes to the Microsoft Entra ID, because when you leverage on the on-premises domain services, we have hierarchies. We have organization unit where you can actually put in your users and say, okay, this is an hierarchy. We have what we call the GPO, which is the good policy object, which are used in assigning or enforcing compliances and the like. Those things are not available in Microsoft ID because it's flat. There are no hierarchy. When I create a user, it's not different from other users. What I can just do is just add them to group and say, oh, this group is for this, it's an admin group, this one is read-only group, but there is no hierarchy to say this is the highest group, this ones follows, just like we have within the Active Directory domain services. Now moving ahead to the pricing plans that we have. Now I told you that based on the service or services that you want to leverage on, you can decide to purchase a license within your environment, or you can actually decide to just go with the free tier. Now if you are looking for single sign-on, I'm so sure we all understand what single sign-on is now. But except if you don't know, please to let me know. But okay, let me just put it this way: you have more than one web application you've actually implemented within your environment, and for every user that signed in, maybe they need to sign into those 6 applications. There is no point where when they are logging to one of them, you want them to start putting in those username and password for every single one before they can authenticate. Just the same way when you log into Google and you just go into your Google Drive, no one is going to ask you. Google is not going to ask you for password and username again or email to sign into your Google Drive. No. If you want to open your Google Photos, no, because everything you have authenticated, because you've signed into your Gmail account, it's just going to authenticate you to all those ones via Google signing, via single sign-on, without the need of asking you, to put in your credentials again. Now, there are other services, like the cloud and federated authentication. Like I said, when you want to leverage on third party for authentication purposes instead of just your username and password. Multi-factor authentication, yes, but when it comes to, let's say, you want to start giving users access to be able to reset their password on their own, you want to create advanced group management where, let's say, you want to have this dynamic group where you say, I do not want to start assigning users to the group manually. What if when I create a user, maybe based on the property, okay, if this user is actually from Nigeria, if this user works in the United States, if this user works in the tech department, just assign that user to this group. That's automated. That's dynamic group. For you to be able to do that, you will not be able to do that using your free tier. So in that sense, you might need to go for the premium P1 or the premium P2 license. So we've got the free tier plan, we've got the premium P1 license, we've got the premium P2 plan, and we've got the governance license. And the governance license, even when you have all those almost everything that you want within the governance license, they are included in the P2, because the P2 is a little bit, let's say you have the free and you are looking at adding PIM, which is the just-in-time access to your roles, and you do not want to purchase P1, you do not want to purchase P2, and you just feel like, okay, let's go with the governance license. Yes, that can work for you. But if you have got P2, there is no need for you to purchase P1 or governance license, because all those things have been included. We all know how these plans work. So that's that. It's just based on services that you want to leverage on. So if you are not looking at having conditional access configured, you are not looking at user provisioning, you create an application and you want all those users within your Microsoft Entra ID to be provisioned automatically into that application, so that when they want to log in, their user account already exists within that application identity management solution. You want to leverage on P1 or P2. If not, then if you want to do it manually, then go with your free tier. So it all depends. It's all your choice. Now, I did talk about.
Please,
Yeah.
sorry, please, can you just go back to the last slide? Maybe just for a few seconds. Please, can you explain that conditional access better, please?
Are you sure? Okay, so
I just want to understand.
So for the
Like,
conditional access,
that's for
I'm just going
example.
to give you a scenario. Now, let's say you are trying to access a particular application. Let's say PayPal. PayPal says, don't let me use PayPal. Netflix. You want to go and watch one of these movies on Netflix, and currently let's say you are in the US. You get what I'm saying? And once you try to access that movie, Netflix checks your IP, where it's coming from, and notice that you are in the US, and that particular movie is only for Nigerians or for people in Africa. It checks and says no, you do not have access to this based on some condition. So when it comes to conditional access, some conditions needs to be met before you are allowed to access that particular service. I'm so sure you will have tried accessing at some point. You will have tried accessing some web application, and they would tell you, you cannot access from this location. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that condition, that has been set within that particular application has not been met. So in that case, you'll be denied access based on your location. So you need to meet a condition to be able to access. Do you get what I'm saying? You need to meet
Yes.
a condition. That's the conditional access. You know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Sam, yes, a lot of factors that determine the plans, it all depends on what you want to leverage on. So like I said, if it's you would see, let me see, I'm just going to pull up my account again, and I'll just go to, I'm going back to groups. This particular Enter ID account or tenant is currently on free tier. There are a lot of things I will not be able to do, like the access review, which we're going to talk about, later. But for this one, for the group management, just I'll show you something. Now, my membership type is just assigned. It's just assigned. I cannot change this. If I've got Premium P1 within my environment, I will be able to select if I want this to be dynamic, dynamic user assigned or dynamic device assigned. Do you understand? Now, in that case, with this one now, if I've got 5,000 people that needs to join that group, I need to start adding them manually, to the group. But if you have got the dynamic, you can just create like a logic that will add all those users to the group. Do you understand? So we'll start looking at it. So it depends on what you really want, and that's what would determine um what you want to go for. So there are a lot of things that we've got, lots more services. These are not all the features that that determines that stuff. Lots. So I talked about the fact that the last thing you want your IT department to be doing is to be resetting password. And it's going to even be frustrating for people that are raising tickets. Let's imagine we have 50 tickets coming in every day for password reset. A lot of people forget their password for sure. And just be like, oh, did I put arch there, or was it plus? And I tried it, and I still don't remember. And I just like, oh, okay, I'll just get a ticket. I can't work. Imagine on a Monday morning you're trying to log in, you cannot log in. You raise a ticket, you're number 50 on the queue, and maybe by at 4 p.m. that's when they are now attended to you. That means practically you lost that day. You didn't do anything. So um, Microsoft has given this, this or have this feature that you can create with this one also. You'll not be able to do this one if you don't have at least Premium P1 within your environment. So you need those licenses to be able to leverage on this one also. But let me tell you one hack about this thing. Those licenses are needed except for users that have got global admin roles. So global admin don't need um a license to leverage on password reset. but we'll get there and we'll see what are some other features. But that doesn't mean you should assign anyone global admin. You know the implication when you assign a global admin to anyone. Um, so for the self-service password reset, like I said, you want to give your user the liberty to be able to reset their password on their own. This just shows you what are some of the things, or what are things you need to set up to make this happen. What are you just don't want anyone to be able to reset password. What if it's someone trying to log in, or just hijack someone's account? So you don't want to make it easy, and you want that user to be able to give some responses, maybe security questions. There should be like an authenticator method when you want to reset your password. We want to be sure that it is you that is trying to reset that password. Now, the number of method that is required to reset the password, they will just need you, to go to one of these, or we want more than one method, to be certified that you are the one resetting the password. So these are set up. We can decide to say, oh, this is the group of users that I want to, I give this to. If that is done, now we now say how many method does this user need, to reset their password. So if we select 2 here, that means we send an OTP to the email. We'll still ask you some security questions. If you select security questions, you need 5 questions, to you need to register 5 questions, but you need to answer just 3 questions correctly, out of the 5, and that's what you can see here. You understand? And if it's mobile phone, it might be a text message to your mobile phone, or a call to you from the automated system to give you maybe a code and the likes to before you can actually reset your password. But what I need you guys to just understand is that feature, it just gives users the liberty to be able to reset their password without the need for an administrator to do that for them. Yep, I think we are good. We've talked about Microsoft Enter ID, how users will set their password, the difference between Enter ID and or the comparison of Enter ID and AADDS. Let's now go to users and groups. How do we manage our identities? How do we create users accounts? How do we create group accounts? Now, I'll take you back to, before I start talking about those things, I'm just going to take you back here. Now, this is, you all know how to access this particular environment. The portal is just you going to portal.azure.com, and that will give you, access to. If you do not want to do that, you can do entra.azure.com, and it takes you your Entra ID portal only, and not the Azure environment, or everything. Now, this is how the Entra ID environment looks like. You can see we've got the name of the organization. This is overview. We can see the tenant ID. This is the primary domain that has been verified within the organization. We've got the license type, which I'm currently using, which is the free, because I'm not using some of those features, and because this is a test environment. Now, you've got users, the number of users I've created within my environment. We've got the number of groups, number of applications, and number of devices, that exist within my environment. Now, you can see what you can actually manage from here, but major focus now is the users and groups. So if I click on this particular user, it's going to take me to where I can actually create users, groups, and the likes, or manage them. Here also, I can go from here if what I want to do is not just to manage those users that have already been created. Maybe I just want to create a new user, or I want to invite a user to my tenant as guest. Then I just invite a external user. I don't need to go to this particular blade, you know. Group also, I can do that from here. So any of these things, when I click any page in Azure, maybe something I just need to tell you, is called blade. So when I say, oh, I'm clicking on, I'm going to, can you go to the users blade, just know I'm referring to it as the page, so it's still blade page, everything. All right, so I don't know what's going on with my network today. It's kind of slow. I've clicked on users, and what this will show all the user stuff I currently have within my tenant. And here I can decide to create more users. I can decide to invite, more. How do I create more users? So here, all I need to do is just to click on the create new user. You're going to see the difference when it comes to creating a new user and inviting those users. Now, if I want to create a new user, because I clicked create a new user, it's just going to give me this saying, what do you want, the domain name to be? So because this is the default domain that I've actually verified within my environment. Now, if I do this, I say Baba, and it's going to be baba@iteratives.com. Because I'm creating this from here, this user is going to become, let's just do it. This user is going to become a member of this organization because I've created it within my Microsoft Enter ID, and this is the same work or school account that I was talking about. Now you can see these are other properties that you can fill up. We can also create custom ones. I'll show you how you can do that as we go ahead. And these are, I was talking about groups. Yep.
Please, can you increase your screen? It's kind of small.
Really?
Maybe you go.
What about now?
Yeah, it's much better.
Okay, that's okay.
Thank you.
Now you can see the user type that I was talking about. Now, because I'm creating this user, even when you can change this to guest, but don't do that. Now, first name, last name, you can have all those user accounts, all those other properties added also. Age group, if you want to have, maybe age group, we'll still talk about this because if you select anything less than 18, you need to, grant user consent and the likes, user location. There are some other properties. So I talked about the fact that, let's say you created a group which is a dynamic group, and those users needs to get into that group using like a logic you've created. Or let's say, oh, you just said, if user type is member, please add this user to that group. That's like a logic we've created, to be able to access that group. So it's just going to scan through all those users and look for users with member accounts. So these properties are very important. On the assignment part, we have three different things. We have the administrative unit, the admin group, and ad group and ad role. So let's start with the administrative unit, where we're going to be talking about. Let's say within our organization, we've got different departments. Different departments, and we want maybe the head of each department to be able to manage their own users, their own groups, without even when the cloud engineers can still manage everything, but we want to give that autonomy to, those group leaders, or those head of department to be able to manage. So we can create different admin unit for them and say this admin unit for finance. And what will happen is someone which is also a leader in one admin unit will not be able to access the other admin unit. Do you understand? So what we are doing there is we want you to, have that access to manage your own people. So that's one of the reasons why we have the, administrative unit. So we can have different administrative units based on our own reason, or based on our own, purpose. Then if we want to add that user to a group, maybe I created a group and I was like, okay, let me just add this user to this particular group. I do not want to create the user. Then afterward, coming back to add the user to the group, you can do that from here. The last one is if I want to assign a role to this user, and mind you, we are within the enter ID. The roles you are going to be seeing here are not roles which are related to resources. These are going to be directory roles. These are going to be enter ID roles, enter ID roles in the sense that you want to create an application, you want to manage user, you want to manage conditional access, you want to manage groups and the likes. Those are roles that you're going to see here, which are different from owner role on subscription, virtual machine login role, and the likes, which are related to resources. But for here, these roles are roles that are related to identity objects. So if you want to manage users, to be able to create users, groups, set password, I might assign that to you here. You want to become an help desk administrator, where you are able to, reset password for other users, but none for, an administrator. I will do that. If we want to have just one particular user that will be inviting guests, that's his own job or his or our own job to just invite guests to our tenant. Yes, we can assign this role, to that person. It all depends on, what you want. It all depends on what you want, what kind of role, what kind of role. So these are directory roles because we are working from the identity part, and the user, is an identity object. So you can see another reason why you want to get maybe a premium P1 or P2 license. Now you might be like, this role is too, an application administrator. This guy is able to create an application, and creating the application is not a problem. It's going to be able to delete an application. What if this person goes in there and delete our application? I want to create a custom role, and I will name the role application creator. The user is only able to create but is not able to delete. So you need that custom role. When you say custom roles, you are able to manage what permission you want to assign, to that particular user. You do not want to use, because all these roles you can see here, they are inbuilt roles. You do not want to use the inbuilt roles. You want to create your own role and assign that role, to those users or to that particular user. So you need, license also to be able to. You see the reason why you cannot have or work in an organization and they will not have like the premium role, because it's always needed. Those features are needed. I've got a different portal or different organization which I will be maybe leveraging on, and that has got premium P2 also, so I'm able to demonstrate all these things for you. So when we get there, I'll be able to demonstrate, um yep. And once you are good with everything, you review and create, and this is going to create, and now you can see user already is created successfully. I can click on that, and it takes me to that user account, and these are everything: object ID created, identity of that user, because the user was created within this particular tenant. The .microsoft is showing. You can see I've not assigned the user to any role. I've not assigned any license to that user. No application has been assigned to the user. I can check, for me to be able to monitor. Also, I need a premium license. Now, these are other properties of that user. When was the user created? What time was the last time the user changed their password and the like? So one thing when it comes to management of user in Azure also is I've created this user and I decided to, I don't want this user, I'm just going to delete this user. And just hold on, you can see, because I'm an administrator, I'm able to reset the password of that user, manage some other things, also edit the property. So for you to be able to create a user or delete the user, you need an extra ID role to be created for you, either the built-in role or or the inbuilt, sorry, the built-in role or the custom role. I don't know what's going on. So sorry, my network is a little bit not too cool today. Just hold on. So I'm just trying to delete the user and it's loading. So, but there are certain rules for certain things. So for you to be able to do this, at least you need user administrator or the global admin, or any other custom rules that give you access to be able to do it. I've deleted that particular user, and does that mean that if I want that particular user, since I've deleted it, I need to go and recreate it? That's going to be, a little bit tedious, or let's say not tedious, but imagine I deleted 5,000 users. That means I need to recreate them. But no, we've got this blade where deleted users are actually, are being stored for 30 days, so when you delete this user, it goes there for 30 days. Same thing goes with the groups. When we start looking at, groups also, you would see that once we delete groups, we can also have those groups in there for 30 days. However, there is a but. There are different types of groups that you can create within the Azure environment. We've got the Microsoft 365 groups. We've got the security groups, and we've got some other groups within the Microsoft 365. But within Azure, we've got Microsoft 365 groups and we've got security groups. If you delete the Microsoft 365 groups, yes, they are going to be there for 30 days. However, if you delete a security group, it's going to delete instantly. So before you delete that security group, you want to check again. So it's not going to stay for 30 days. Now you can see this user has been deleted. It's going to be permanently deleted on this date. I can decide to restore this particular user back, if need be, but I'm not going to do that. You can also permanently delete this particular user. Just imagine I was just trying to create one user, and that took me like 30 seconds, or let's say 1 minute, to create that particular user. Let's say I've got 5,000 users I want to create. Do I have to always come here and click on create new user until I get to 5,000? That's going to be too tedious. We've got what we call the bulk operations. You want to bulk create user, you want to invite users, you want to delete so many users at once. So you can actually leverage on this bulk operation. And what this does is it gives you this CSV file that you can download. And when you download that CSV file, you are going to be able to fill in, those users' information. What information are needed? At least we need the email account, or the email that needs to be created, the user principal name in this sense. We need some other things like maybe the first name, the last name. Those are optional, though. You can decide not to. But let me see if I could download that and show you guys what I've downloaded. And you see, yes, and you see there is no limit, but there is limit. So you can see operations can only run up to 1 hour. So if you have so many things you've created, at some point the operation might not be able to, that might not be able to be completed due to stuff. So you can see if I want to create like users at the minimum, we need this information to be filled. What's going to be the display name, what's going to be the user principal name, which is going to be, if I want to create anyone now, let's say I want to create the Baba, so I do the Baba at it360ng.com. I'm going to do the same thing. The set is my part, so I'm just going to do this. Then this one, block from signing. I say no, I want this user to be able to sign in also. And I'm going to just say Baba test book. That's going to be, so I can decide to start putting first name, Bab, Anima Shaun, or whatever you want to put there, then job title, farmer, department, whatever you want to put. You don't, those are not so important, but these are so important. At least the initial password, which you can change, the block signing if you want to block it or not, the user principal name. I'm going to save this and let's see, because that is going to be, I'm going to test another one, test 222, and I'm going to do the same test 222 at it360ng. Then I would have like the same password literally. Then do I want to block this? No. Then I just save this. Now that I've done that, all I need to do is come back here, click on upload your files, go to that where the file is, and this is it. I upload it, and voila, I just click on submit. So if I have 5,000 users, and that's what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to click on this to check how the operation is going on. So this is the bulk operation which I just uploaded now. Don't completion time, bulk operation is finished. However, it failed. Let's see, why did it fail? No, so that's didn't fail. This was created. Request was unsuccessful. What happened? Bad request. Let me see. The domain portion of the user, you can see, is invalid. So I think, let's see why it failed. So now you can see I only type in 222 test 222 at it360ng and without the .com. Yep, so that was why it failed. So because this has been created, I'm just going to change this and say test 223 at it360 ng.com. So then I'll do test 223. Then I save this one and I try to go again. So let's see. So because I want to bulk create now, I'm just going to upload the file again. So you can see this one is already there, but about test bulk, that's there already. But the other one wasn't created because there was error with the. So we'll do that again. I just click on these. This is not completed, so I can refresh this. This has been completed, and we can see success. That's true. So we are going to be looking for test 222 and test 223. So then I'll go back to, you can see bulk operation successful. Then I go back to all users, and oh my word, this is really slow today. Let us wait, please. Okay, so I'm looking for test 222. I'll just do 22. Now you can see these are the users. We can check when these users were created, or this particular was created. You can see June 28th. Based on my own timing, this user was just created now, so that's why you can see, 829 to today, so we used bulk operation to create the user. Just because I've shared these online, I just delete these users. Yep. Then I'll do the back test also, because they've got like yeah. So that's how we can bulk create user. The same way you can invite user also. It's just the same logic. If I want to bulk delete those users also, that's the same way I will bulk delete them. Now we'll be able to create users. What if we want to invite a user? Now, when you want to invite a user, we are not creating like a UPN for that user within our environment. We are just inviting the email of that user. So all I need to do is just to put an email, then the display name, which is not important, is optional. Then yeah, let's say this email is not associated with a mailbox. Let's say I just created test 222, at gmail.com. That one might not have a mailbox, and I want to send that invitation, to babafemi.bulugbe@gmail.com. I can put that one here, so that's, I just want to CC. And you can see the same properties, but the only difference is the user type, which is the guest. Even when you can still change these to member, we'll tell you reasons why sometimes you want to change these to member, uh, at some point. Then you can see almost the same properties, the same thing assignment, but you can see I can't add that particular guy to an admin unit, because it doesn't exist within the. Now, another thing is the review and create, which is after you've added the user to the group, you've added the user to, you know, give me a minute, please. Yeah. Yeah, so once you do that, now you can see, then you can go ahead to review, but it's just going to, yeah, so review, this is the email I'm inviting. Do you want to send invitation? Yes. What's the user type? Is it added to any group, any role? Then I can invite. I'm not sure I will be able to invite this person, as it looks like it already exists within. But let's see. Yeah, okay, it's invited. So when you invite user, and I go to all user, you're gonna have the user type being guest. You can see this is, identity is either mail or, Microsoft account. It's not going to be, so if this user is already associated, let's say with a Microsoft account, or it's going to be showing the identity as a Microsoft account. If not, just going to show it as mail. The member users that are created within the organization, their identity shows as the the domain name, initial domain name within the within the tenant, and you can see the question type. Is either invited, invited or nothing, or email verified. This email verified means this particular user was the one that created this tenant, and that's the only user you're going to see email verified on. The others are going to show blank or invitation. So lots of things you can do here. You can check the audit logs of each of these users, what the activity of each of the users. You can also check the sign-in logs of each of these users or all the users. You can do password reset. You can do some settings. You can also raise a request to Microsoft regarding an issue from this blade. Same thing goes with the groups. We just talked about the user account. What about the group? When we want to create a group, like I said, we've got all groups. You can see deleted groups. The same way I created some groups and some users and I deleted them, they are going to be showing also here. So if I click on the all groups, I will be able to create groups here, and depending on the kind of pricing or license that you have, you can decide to create a security group or a Microsoft 365 group, which is going to be dynamic, or you know um is going to be assigned type of group. So if you create a security group and you want that security group to be dynamic in nature, where users are able to join the group without you manually adding those users, they are only able to join means based on some properties in there. But because I do not have premium P1, let's see. Would Just give me a minute. I'll try to sign into a tenant that does have um really yeah, that should be um, okay. So sorry. I'm the one doing I'm not doing what I need to do. Okay, so yep, it should be. Yeah. Oh, I think I've not. Oh, I'll check the. We'll look at that next week though. I've got this other account, but it's too long to remember. So yeah, this is how we create a group. You can create a security group or Microsoft 365 group. The difference here is if I do this one's going to have like a group email, the M365 groups, which is different from security group, which you can have without creating an email. Another reason why, yeah, I just remembered. Another reason why you might want to have the premium P1, even when you're trying to create a group, is if you have the premium P1 or P2, you are able to create a group where you can assign roles to that group. Because you've got no license now, it's not going to be showing. It's not going to be showing. Um, as something you can create. Um, I wish I could show you guys. So members, because this one membership type is assigned, I need to manually assign. I can assign users while I'm creating, groups. The good thing is um you can also assign devices to groups. But one thing you need to know is you cannot have a group where you have users and members assigned. So it's either, I'm adding devices to that group or I'm adding users to that group. So I need to pick one, I need to pick one. So if I've added devices, I will not be able to use that group for, membership also. Yeah, when you create an Office 365 group, you can have a nested group. Nested in the sense that you can have a group within another group, which is not possible when you're leveraging on the security group. Um, that's yeah. I would try to get the access to the other to the other Azure tenant so that I can show you that the way the dynamic works and the like. So yeah, I'm not sure I've done. So I've got dynamic when that's when I used to have license. So let me click on it and you would see how different this is. So what this got is we've got what we call the membership rule. It's not going to be showing now. It's not going to be showing because I do not have that particular license again. So there is this dynamic membership rule that talks about if this user belongs to this particular department, if this user, his name starts from F, add this user to this group and the likes. And we talked about the administrative unit and the and everything. You can have your groups also created within an administrative unit or assign that group to an administrative unit after you've created, all those things and the likes. Okay, so let's just stop it from there and go back to this one. Configure users group. This is just going to tell you create how to create, which we've done. Manage user accounts, create bulk account, which we've done.
Baba Femi, can I ask a question, please?
Please, everyone, quiet, please.
Yeah, I want to, is it that one we just mentioned in terms of the group that when, situation where you are, maybe sales department, for example, and you create a group email for them, and all the member of that department, they can pick up the mail once someone send a mail to that. Does this group, I mean, does assigning people to that group, is that what will work for such situation?
No, so what you are trying to do in that situation, you are trying to create an M365 groups where, if I create this, do you understand? And I say
Yeah.
sales, every member of this department gets a mail once a mail is sent to the sales at it360.onmicrosoft.ng.
Yeah. So my question, how do you map the people to this
No, you
email?
can create a group. That's just give me a minute.
Okay.
So you can currently is assigned, because of that type. You can see sales, and I just create,
Okay.
and I can look for even when I can add users when I'm creating also. So because it's assigned type, the group type is assigned, it's not dynamic, and that's why you're not going to be seeing that dynamic stuff here. Now you can see
Okay.
members of the group.
So now I'll be adding them manually.
Yeah, I now have to add them manually. I now
Okay.
have to add them
So it's not
manually.
one. Okay.
Then I have to go to add members and start adding them manually. So it's
So
it's
you can use either their email or their device or only email
no.
when you add
In
them.
this case, you are targeting the UPN. We don't call it email. It's user principal
Okay.
name within the Azure
Okay.
environment. You understand what I'm
Okay.
saying? Uh, I don't know why my network is a little bit shitty today, but it is. It takes. Uh, okay, we'll come back to this, but this is the way you just add them, just from here. Then the UPN are going to show up here, and you can start adding them one after the other. So once
Okay.
if you have created your own Azure environment, you can just try doing this.
Okay.
But even if you have not, we've got all the time. Okay, so let's go back here. So we've done these assign licenses to users and groups. It's an extra
Okay,
topic,
man,
but
please, can I
it's
ask a
something.
question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. While you were doing the invite for external users,
Mm-hmm.
when you were under the properties,
Yep.
the user type, so you mentioned that you're going to explain something around selecting guest and selecting member. No, the one we had was guests.
Okay, so don't let
You
us
say you're going
do.
to show
Don't
us
let us
something.
go too far. Yeah. The thing is within the Azure environment, we can set what users can actually see. Do you understand? And
Okay.
based on the default settings that we have, when you have a guest account created, there is a limited access to guests compared to members within the environment. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
Now, if I have something like external identity, I don't, like I said, I don't know why my network is a little bit shitty today. Now, yeah, less guest users have limited access to membership properties and membership of directory. Here there is less to what the guest users can actually see within the environment. So that's why you can change this also, to have guest users have the same access as members, but it might not make sense in some cases. Do you understand? So when you have guest accounts assigned to a user type and a member account assigned to a user type, what they see when they log in, even when they have not been assigned any role, is going to be different because of some of these settings. Do you get what I'm saying? Based on this setting. So that's why most times you just don't want to change users and assign guests to them. Aside that, also when it comes to licenses, also there is a way we license users which is different from the way we license guests. If I go to licenses here, you can assign licenses to users within your environment. However, license assignment is different from guests. So we have one license to one user. However, 5 guests can actually share one license. Do you understand? So the user account, we have 5 guests. We have 5 guests to one license, and we have one license to one user member within the environment. So when you have, and that's why some people convert their users to get so that they can pay less when it comes to licensing, but it doesn't make any sense. So I'm just telling you there are a lot of things when it comes to that user type. It's different stuff. So I think for now, um, that should be enough. That should be enough.
So Femi,
Yep.
Okay, thank you, sir.
yeah. So you're saying, from what I hear you say, I would just want to confirm if my thought is correct. So for guests, so maybe guests can just view things. They can't necessarily maybe
So
edit.
by default, if I create guest account and I create user account, that guest cannot even see anything within the entire idea environment based on these settings that I have. Do you understand? But the users can actually still see. They can still read something, though they cannot perform anything. So, but if you can assign a role to a guest also, even a global admin role, and the guest will be able to kick you out of the your tenant. Do you understand? You have the same access as a global admin that is a member. However, there are still limitations. Your guest account cannot log into the admin portal. We call it admin portal. Do you understand?
Okay.
Even when it's assigned a global admin role, it won't be able to log into the admin portal. This is what we call the admin portal. That is this. You can try it. admin.microsoft.com. You will not be able to have a guest account log in here. You won't. You will be kicked out. Like kicked out. So, this is the admin portal. We call it admin portal. So if you just try it by assign like a global admin to a guest account, is able to do everything, but try to use that global admin, which is a guest user, to log into this admin portal. You won't be able to. So there are just limits to what guests can actually do, even if they have the whole permission. But by going back the default settings within the environment, there's a limit to what guests can actually do. Do you understand? Compared to what members can do.
Okay, thank
That's,
you.
okay. So with that, we'll call it a day. Because that's the same thing we are going to be explaining here. It's just like almost everything that we've talked about, is the same thing. I don't want to start talking about all these things. You can see it talks about the type of groups you can create, membership type, assigned, dynamic user, dynamic device. It talks about P1, P2, what you can assign to users, and what are some of the things that are needed when you want to assign them. It tells you to explore user accounts, explore, group account and the likes, and licensing information. Now, this one takes you to how to configure user accounts, and this is the lab we are going to be, looking at. And the lab also, it just tells you how you can create a user, assign an IT lab administrator to that user, invite another one, and add all of them to a group called IT lab administrator. I'm sure you can do this based on what we've done, right? So, like I said, it will be more of the practical section, me showing you, than just reading but it will cover everything that we need to do from here. All right. Any other question before we call it a day? Any other question? All right. If there are no other questions, we'll just call it a day. I'll talk to you guys next Saturday.
Thank you, Rose.
Thanks, man. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Yes.
Laji. Bye, everyone.